So it's Good Morning America from Las Vegas. Reality 2021 America. Who are we? Who are we and how are we dealing with this current status of living in Las Vegas? Understanding that we black people have not had the ability to critique the public services that are being offered to the children here in Las Vegas. And the real reality is that, we are all truly American citizens. Responsibility for activism is within our own selves and our own personal communities. As we, the people, are recognized as taxpayers, we, the people, are recognized as American citizens, and we, the people, choose what happens to our people within our local communities. It's when we have been oppressed for so many years that the understanding of failure has become accepted in our communities. As black children are far below basic and far below basic, where does the conversation actually just begin? Actually, you have to understand education is built on building blocks. And if children are not promoted annually, that's why we have grade promotion, so that children have an opportunity to learn what is projected to learn within the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, the grade levels. But when your child comes home and your child is receiving a letter grade of F and the classrooms are overclouded and they're complaining about your child not having the transition skills, let me tell you, the resources are generated from the federal government to educate poor children. Children neglected and delinquent, children in poverty, children foster care. That's what the federal dollars actually provide for states. Every state is qualified for these additional services by the number of poor people and the number of immigrants that live within a community. And that's just our personal reality, life in 2021. As we are all taxpayers, regardless if you have children or not, the reality is. Good morning, James. It is a real reality that we all are taxpayers, irregardless of the amount of taxes that you pay, you do pay taxes. And this April, we should all understand that what we witnessed at the Capitol was an insurrection on being an American citizen. As we are so committed to the Pledge of Allegiance. We all said it growing up. I'm 62. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. But what happened to the black people? Why do we continue to see public executions of young black people? Why is it that the fear for them to be willfully combative is a threat to public safety? I'll tell you why. Because we've stolen everything we can possibly steal from the black community. As there is no oversight, no accountability, there is no foundational services actually provided with children who are truly in need of additional services under special education. As there's no maintenance of effort. Oh no, I said, maintenance of effort, and somebody just got annoyed with that little MOE, and I said yes, and he says, well, it has to do with the money and the amount of money that we spent last year. And I said, no, it actually doesn't. It has to do with the achievement of the students and the annual yearly progress and the tools that the district actually selected to monitor and demonstrate that they were providing access to all children. And can you imagine, for whatever reason, black children are not progressing and black people have been oppressed? That's how come I've taken to this, this medium of communication as the inability to share concerns about your children. And it's just not a simple inability. No, it's a structural inability to provide the advocacy necessary to ensure that your children are making it annual yearly progress. And I'll tell you why. Because if your children are not at grade level by third grade, I think we have to wait for the It's a helicopter to go overhead. But if your children are not at a certain specific level, then the districts are using below grade level and promoting the children. And then the teachers, nobody wants to go back and get that one child, because pretty soon it becomes many children who are being just left behind. And if you're in the classroom, if you're not getting it, you know what it feels like. And I work with parents who had children who would start off the beginning of the year trying to stay up with the class, and then soon get behind in the class, and then soon just be carrying the letter grade of F and still being promoted. What does that look like? It looks like social promotion, they call it. And then here in Clark County, that means they fixed everything for these teachers who may be struggling, and that's understandable. That's because they haven't partnered with the parents to demand that the dollars actually are coming in the community to provide support to the children. No, they start protecting themselves. They want to protect their health care and their vacations. And, it's natural to want to provide foundational services for your family when you're working in an organization. But you should understand, who wants to put their children with people who are non-credentialed? Help me with that. And then, you have to understand, when you accept something less, that you don't have the ability to demand something more. So, they have programs that are written through the Department of Education. Because this is current legislation that was passed, I think, in January. This said that if you had a nonprofit, you could open up an early childhood education program and get federal dollars for it, and you didn't have to have any credentialed people. Come on now. You could be a not-for-profit doing good for the community. How good does that make you feel when it's your children who are not benefiting? And you're providing something less substantial than the Head Start program offered through the federal government for families in poverty. And actually, in a city as large as Las Vegas, there should be a Head Start on the east side, a west side, and the north side, and all four corners. And then they should have Head Start little people who work with the bigger organization, helping to train those families to help support those children, so that we don't have all these CPS cases. Because it's early opportunities to learn how to be a real good parent, to support your children. It's critical, because if you don't have the knowledge, I'm sorry, the challenge is great. And as we all witnessed this past year, with a young woman who had a 1-year-old and she had a 1-month-old, and she cracked, basically, and she killed her 2 children. But where was the community support for that family? It's disgusting that we don't have early intervention, and that perhaps postpartum depression that exists everywhere else in the United States doesn't exist right here in Las Vegas. As there was a young black man too who threw his baby off the balcony in the black community, and the black community is truly suffering, and we black people are not given the time to express the concerns of the reality of the dysfunction in our community, because we're not being able to be in on the conversation, because they just eliminate your ability to participate because they know more than you do, boo. Don't you get it? That's what oppression is all about. Don't you get it? That's why finally we have an African American club on the historic West Side again. But I would hope that every black entertainer living in the Las Vegas community comes to support that organization, and that black people actually have a way to communicate with educated or gifted black people, because the gift is from the heavens. Amen. And when we get the gift, you have to understand what the gift looks like and how to use the gift and how to empower yourself with the gift, because it is all about engaging. Good morning, my niece. My niece is on. is my great niece. So her mother is my niece, and she has a daughter. So I have a great niece, and it's like being a grandmother, but not. I'm going to be a grandmother in July. So I'm going to tell you, it's so critical that we, the people, understand that we, the people, must figure out how we open the doors to the conversation about what's happening in our communities, because it's on us. You know what I'm saying? I mean, people can have a conversation about what happens in your community, about who you are, because what they portray on the news is not about you. There was some young black woman who really didn't have any skills out there on the historic West Side trying to help black folks who were homeless and helping herself too. But she really didn't have the skills. And she was allowed to create this menagerie of bringing in so many homeless, disabled people. And she really didn't have the skills or ability to take care of them, but the money was good. So I'm sure it started off with one or two, but then it went to too many. But everybody in the black community knew what was going on. And how we don't create organizations that hold ourselves accountable, but ensure that people have enough skills and ability to participate and provide these services for these people. It's not a game. Life is not a game. And there's so much money, but guess what? So they're going in there and shutting these people down and giving these people, I'm assuming, creating housing for them. I don't know. The problem is that the inability to afford proper housing and the process for black community people to go into business for themselves, providing these types of services for people who look like them, because other people don't want to be bothered with our people. So let's not pretend that they're doing us something good by criminalizing these folks who really needed additional enforcement. You understand what I'm saying? Additional process and services that they could help provide these services for these people, because quite frankly, they were not qualified, but it really didn't matter, because when it came to the intent, it came to the caring, and when it came to the caring, it came to the attempt, but it was not qualified. And how horrible that we all have to hear about that on the news, right? Where are them black pastors having the conversation about what's going on in our community and the inability to seek real services to align our people to help provide support for our people? Because you know what? The money comes down to the community. Oh yes, everyone is counted. As you have a social security number and you live in a town, believe me, boo, you on the roll. And so when they come and give the census money to the people who look like you, for the people who are qualifying for all those wonderful services, then they pay themselves. And then they don't hold themselves any accountability. Zero. So I'm just going to tell you, it's a frank situation. In 2021, after we all witnessed the insurrection at the Capitol, time to wake up. So, early in the morning, the early bird gets the worm. So, how do we deal with this? Quite frankly, we have to open up the conversation to more and more communication to understand what's happening to your brother over there. Just like we should have all known that so many people in poverty don't have an opportunity to have housing. But how come the grants are not available for us to open up businesses to provide housing for our people? Because they don't want to do it. They don't want to provide housing and they don't want to provide services, but they sure can critique somebody who attempted to do it. And it wasn't about the do good, because these people couldn't care for themselves. And, there's all kind of money. I'm sorry. If she had hired people to come in and help provide the in-home support for these people, she wouldn't be in the trouble that she was in. And her trying to get the money and getting a loan to try to coordinate her services, oh well, that just put her more on the spotlight, because it really demonstrated what she didn't have the ability to do. But the communication from the community organizers that are receiving money to help align services in the local community, which should be within the community affected or afflicted, because so many black people are just affected, simply afflicted behind the inability to seek the early foundational services in public education. As in Las Vegas, they have created an opportunity for themselves to be absolved from the inability for you to make progress in the public school, because at the end of the day, you're not going to graduate. You can apply for this thing called an adult diploma, and you don't have to have everything else that everybody else achieved. No, even though they never offered it to you, you don't have to seek it anymore because they will lift you out. It's called a certificate of completion. It's the same thing they give to the children with disabilities. But with that little paper, you cannot just go into the junior college. And if you do, when you get there and you get that real assessment and you find out that you never got past 8th grade, well then, boo, wake up. What were you doing for those 12 years that somebody got paid that's living out there in Summerlin or up there in Anthem in the hills, providing services to the people who look like you, boo, and putting them on a bus and, you know, revenue. And if you don't understand what revenue is, then look at your children. Black people with 4 and 5 children, and understand the dollars that are allocated in the local community to ensure that access happens to your children, and whose salaries are they paying to ensure that access happen. And then what happened? Wake up, you know, wake up, Mr. West, you know, hey. I mean, there are just messages in the music. And Nipsey said that what broke us all apart, what separated us, we used to be people that would stand together. I mean, you know, James Brown, remember when they said James Brown stopped the riots in Chicago because he did a concert after they shot Martin Luther King, and the black people were so upset and we were just threatening to riot, but he calmed everybody down. I mean, you have to understand the message that James Brown gave. The power is within you, but only within you when you understand you have power. And if you're out there doing foolish shit, and I'm sorry, you know, I never took a risk with allowing someone to come and take over my life by my fucked up choices. And so, you know, when I had children, I probably wasn't really ready to have children. But at 26, I had my first one. And when the parent of that one chose not to stand by me, hey, that wasn't that song, Stand By Me. No, not in the black community, because niggas run. Soon as you get that burden, niggas run. And that's just real. It's just unfortunate, but it's just the way it is. But we just have to understand that during slavery, black men were used to procreate, and that's all. And so kind of like during the comeuppance of black people, we kind of like evolved, and then it was not good to have a man in your house when you get the federal and the dollars. And so then people were just governing that process. You know, you remember the Shaft movie, you know what I'm saying? Y'all remember that, you know, that song, whatever. But I'm just telling you, we've grown up through it. We've already been through it. And instead of creating family grants, they created these grants for the mothers and the children, you know what I'm saying? And then which criminalized the father, because the father got out of school and couldn't make a penny. Why? Because he went to school for 12 years, and guess what? Got letter grades of F, and then had the ability to apply for that certificate of completion, and then got out and didn't have no job. But guess what? Obama fixed that. Yes, he did. If everybody would read under the Every Child Succeed Act, every state who wasn't graduating children at grade level of proficiency, well, those people had a right to go and get a vocational rehabilitation, you know, a job, training. And that was the obligation of the state. Well, how did they implement that, boo? I think that they were crossing the lines and getting children who were in gifted programs. You know, they have this GT stuff going on here, and they have these harbor programs, actually. And I'm saying the word harbor just confuses me. But this is one stop before you get to the penitentiary, you know? And in those programs, they don't actually offer the academic support that you would get in your regular high school, but you get transferred out of your spot. And at 11 years old, they've got legislation written that you could be removed from your home school permanently, forever. And then someone else get your spot. And I'm saying, wow, is that how they do it here? And they really do it here like that. I mean, there's legislation written that they didn't want to have any evaluations from the federal government for the acceptance of the dollars from the, you know, U.S. Code 20, whatever, the one that gives them the right to have the federal money. Well, they didn't want to report any data until 2024 or 2026. And I'm saying, but they had something else in there, stupidly written, that they wanted to have people working with children without no credentials under the little special waiver until 2024 or 2026. And I'm saying, well, who's really signing up for those programs that no credentialed people are working in? And these people are getting real salaries that you would never get, boo. Nope, because you ain't working with your people, because you're not getting those contracts. And it's just like after Michael Brown died in Ferguson, we all witnessed the black trucks coming out, and it was really like, it was frightening, as it was 24-hour protest. But then understand, the city council was busy writing long-term contracts for families and people who have gotten those contracts, and ensuring sustainability of the money. And so when the new city council came in, well, there was no money to be talked about, because those contracts were until 2021, till 2025, 10 to 15 years. And they gave no access. And see, that's what we're thinking about right now in America. Who is working where, and who is reaping the harvest, and who is creating access? And ESSA hasn't been a failure, and I can tell you something. Somebody said ESSA has been a failure, and I can tell you, boo, that my son, they said, was severely mentally retarded and communication handicapped and would not read and be able to communicate, graduated with a 1-on-1 aid, a laptop, and above proficient. Why? Because I was there when he was there. Every day I picked him up, I brought him lunch, because he had sensory integration problem, and the food was, he couldn't eat the food, and I would bring him lunch. I just said yes. And when he wasn't reading in the 3rd grade, well, there was one teacher who wanted him to understand that he needed to behave in a certain way, and she was every day incombative with my son. And I went there one day, and 3 adults were standing around my son, and I said, "Excuse me, if you don't back up off my child, we're going to have an incident here." And then I got my baby, and I told that principal he would not go back into that bitch's classroom, and excuse my French, because she was making him act out, and she was trying to say he was trying to hurt her by throwing a computer at her, and he was, and I'm saying, oh no, none of that ever happened, because he was non-communicative. He didn't talk. And so we moved him into the RSP room, and for the rest of the year, I went to school with him every day. And I sat there and I watched my child learn every day. And he went from far, far below basic and repeating the 2nd grade to above proficient in the 6th grade. And yes, boo, education does work. But it only works when the parents understand what the intent behind the transformation of the behavior actually is. You get me? I mean, when there's an expectation of accomplishment, and then there's an accountability model implemented, and guess what? Power individuals have, because failure is just never an option. So we can ask for a full educational evaluation to demonstrate in what way your child would learn if they're not learning. And this stuff that they got going on here, I don't know what it is, but if your child doesn't have the academic content structure that would demonstrate that they would be educated to the full potential of their most educated peer, well then, boo, you ain't getting yours. And because you ain't getting yours, well then you have to figure out how you're going to have a conversation about what's not happening for the children in your community, because it's on you. And people say, oh, I don't have any kids. No, you don't have any kids now, boo. But you still paying taxes, right? When tax time comes, April, whatever it was, I don't remember paying because I've been retired for a minute here, but when the April the 15th ever came around, you better know they had already taken their money out of my check because I didn't want to owe nobody nothing. But you don't have a choice in America. You gonna pay your taxes, boo. And when you pay taxes and the dollars come trickling back to your local community, well, that's happening within your community is a reality. And that's just real. Because this is life. And you've got this one chance. And if you don't have early access to the foundational skills, and if your children are not reading by grade level 3, that's how they were counting the prison beds. I mean, that's how they've been busy building the prisons, and that's how come we have prison industries and how strong that industry is. And, actually, if you go to Congress's website, usa.gov or ed. whatever, go to Congress's website, you will see, what is it called? Prison industries. And that's a United States government kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? And so, get ready for your fitness, James. Have a great day. I come out here because this is like therapy to me, because I have lived truly, and I have raised my children. I have 3 boys. I have a 36-year-old, and I'm going to be a grandmother this year. And he accepted someone in his life that had a child, and I'm just grateful because now I'm a grandmother already. And then I have a 33-year-old who gonna be 34, and I'm not a grandmother yet, you know what I'm saying, until now. And so then I have a 23-year-old, and that's the one I'm telling you about, who is so gifted, but I would never let him walk the streets alone, and that's my struggle, because he is in the spectrum. He is autistic. Social skills are what they are, but he has learned to communicate, and he is not non-communicative anymore. I remember when he was in the 2nd grade, and when I decided to move him out of the communication handicap classroom was because he had his teacher. And he came home one day and he said, "Teacher, do this, owie, owie, hurt." And I said, "Oh, no, that..." You know what I'm saying? And he said, "Oh, no, Mommy. No. It's okay. Oh, no, he knew I was ready to just get somebody. You know what I'm saying? And I scheduled a meeting. And I let her know that he was able to communicate with me. And she said, "What? Me? Never." And I'm saying, "Oh, yeah, boo, you." And I said, "But I can tell you what I can do." And then, my champion who was there, Michael Rosenberg, he said, "Darlene, now we're going to go outside and talk. We're going to fix this. And that's when I got him out of that classroom, isolated, contained classroom where he wasn't learning, where I was the first parent in Sacramento City Unified School District to file the complaint for compliance under the Williams Act, because they were not buying books for children in isolated classrooms for special education. So, the Williams settlement was all about all children having access to the same books, the same educational support tools. And when Maggie Mejia was the superintendent then, she did that evaluation. She saw those books in there all wrapped up, and the kids weren't being allowed to touch them. And guess what? Every child had an opportunity to take a book home then. And that's just real. And they bought books for every child then. And I'm telling you, it's the curriculum, but it's not only the curriculum here, because I looked at the curriculum, it's all online. And I was trying to understand how they coordinated the classes with the online curriculum. I'm confused because, that is about a contract. And it's okay that you have contractors, but you have to understand how the curriculum is measured in the classroom, boo. And we're not talking about performance. And they want to not have to assess. They want to remove the evaluations of the teachers who are working with your children. In 2021, they don't have any better accountability. Just no accountability at all. And I'm saying, until when? 2024? Oh, no, boo, that's not how it works. When you take the federal dollars, you don't have to take the federal money. See? And when you want to educate those Americans, those other Americans, those Americans that look like not you. So you want additional money, and then you're supposed to create money locally from your property revenue. But your property revenue is so low here in Nevada, so those people really ain't paying no taxes. But they have putting people who look like me on buses and just, revenue generation money. So don't think it's not a funny kind of thing. See, the problem is about people not understanding the process of living in America and the amount of time and energy that one has to put into their local community to ensure that the benefits and the resources that are allocated for those people that look like you, boo, I mean, that it's happening for them. But when it's not happening and we watch it not happening, but then we're willing to pay salaries for people who are supposed to be providing this type of support, and then there's no way to measure or monitor anything that's happening in the world where you live. And I'm saying, oh no, that's not how it works. Because see, there was a day and a time where I perhaps, my mom said, one of my videos got restricted on YouTube. And I said, well, why did that happen? And she said, because you sound like, whatever, one of them black revolutionary people. And I said, oh, well, I never thought about that. But guess what? I went through a merge in 2008, and I ran for public office. Yes, I did. I ran for school board in my area, but then I ran against a young man who was a lobbyist, and at the Capitol. And actually, he won because he had people that were backing him. And I see my friend Nate Boyd. He's on the East Coast. And Nate kind of just threw his hands up because he ran for our office too, and he was out there, but he was doing so much of the work in the community and engaging the people, and then pretty soon the people knew who he was. But when he ran for office, the people didn't vote for him. You know why? Because those people are the people that really normally don't vote at all, the ones he was helping. He should have been registering them to vote and getting each one of them to register to vote and then voting for him, because you have to build collaboration amongst your people, because your people used to be together. But for whatever reason, well, you know the reason, house nigga feel nigga mentality. Hey, it is real, because they would give money to house Negroes, or, and then the house nigga would say, Massa, I think they're gonna run tonight, Massa. Massa, we better get the dogs ready. And then when they ran, and then he would get the dogs out, and they be running after you. I mean, your freedom is only valuable to you. But it's not valuable to you if you can't explain the ability to utilize your skills to just do whatever you want to do. I mean, if you were a visionary like Nipsey saw that, the struggle. Why would he be going to school when he was trying to hustle to make sure there was enough money in the family so that he was bringing groceries home any kind of way he was, because he was a young man. And the obligation was to the family, when you understand how the hustle is. And so, when they start putting young black men into prison because of marijuana, and it was just something that they could cultivate and independently sell. It's the same thing with the CDs, but guess what? On the CDs, know that if you own a device, it's tracking how many copies you actually produce. And when you produce past a certain many, then there's something, a little flag goes off, and they're coming, they're watching you. So everything you do is stored in the cloud, and that all happened, and you may not have been paying attention. But if you were wondering, when they passed digital transmission from duplex, it was duplex, and that was one-way transmission. But then Congress went for the digital two-way, open up your living room and your bedroom and wherever you might have a device to the world. And here we are, worldwide. Worldwide is real. Because if I can pick up my cell phone, and I remember when I was in Japan in 1968, and Michael Jackson was on TV, and I would say, oh, wow, wonderful it would be to be in a nightclub and dancing alongside Michael, singing the song, and then videos and all that stuff kind of happened. And that was my ideal. But I'm sure a lot of other people had the same ideal at the time. So here we are, it's a new ideal. And the ideal is, what do you do? And what are you willing to do? And who are you in 2021? Because see, you've lived your life, I've lived my life. And I love my choices because they worked. And it wasn't nothing easy. And life is hard. And I know young people who have made choices that have made their life so hard. And my heart hurts for those young people. But guess what? At any time a person chooses to turn their life around, it's a choice. It's called discipline. I remember when my brother decided he was going to turn his life around, and he was going to get off the drugs, and he was going to clean himself up, and he was just going to make it work. But then he did all that, and he went into the military. But guess then, I mean, the discipline that you have to stay clean was real. That was something that it didn't happen. And then till the journey, but until now, as you age, you understand the skills you have to maintain solvency. It's called sustainability in your life. And you know what you have to do, and you know what you have to commit to make it work. And so you do those things that you have to do to make it work. But when you're young and you're not making it, and this is where we are, because we have allowed too many failed services to happen for our children from birth until 5, and then they start behind. We have to have some foundational demonstration of the maintenance to ensure that our children are making progress. And I can't accept anything less. And you shouldn't accept anything less either, because these are the same children that are going to be looking out for the services that are happening to us in our communities, as we have failed services in our community now because we have people who didn't cross the line, who didn't stay in the fight. I mean, Thurgood Marshall said that if we were going to be a part of this public process, that we needed to guard it and monitor it, and that pathway just died off with the people who were involved in the oversight process. But those doors never closed, I can just tell you. But the opportunity to engage in this process has, and the doors tightly closed. And these people actually believe that they can have some private meetings with public money. And I just want to know, but who are you? Somebody help me with the privacy. I understand the privacy, what you're going to do when you're going to punish an employee, and some of that stuff don't come out. But what you're doing with the money, no, boo, it ain't no private thing. And the accountability, it ain't no private thing. And the failed service, it ain't no private thing. And people have a right to know what you're doing, because if it ain't working for them, then they have a right to choose where it perhaps is going to work. And did you hear the governor? I heard him. Did you hear him when he said that this summer, for children who have fallen behind, and whose parents who probably don't understand where their children are, and whose children have not been learning, are going to have the benefit to sign up with the program, not with Clark County, no, boo, with the state. Oh yeah, I heard it. Now, I don't know how that program's gonna look, but some of you people need to get the first in line. That's what I can tell you. Because, some of the children have been struggling for a long time, and the parents just didn't understand how to get the services for their children. And I can understand, because it is not an easy journey, but I can tell you one thing. I can tell you one thing, is that monitoring the maintenance of children is just the same thing as monitoring your bank account, knowing where the money goes. Understanding that this is a real life, and the investment in the life is real. And if we don't cherish our children, then who are we as a people? So we don't need to understand, it's not about leadership. No, it's about families. And it's about the understanding of the benefit of the families, and families who have to be forced to receive these services that are perhaps negative and punitive, and make it impossible for families to sustain themselves as the punitive behavior continues. You get punished if your children do not go to school, or they want to have a hearing and they can do all kind of negative things to you as an individual, when you don't understand that these things should be beneficial. Well, actually in California they have this thing called Rights Law. You can go online and look up Rights Law, and then understand the assessments and evaluations that have to happen before they can actually take an action. And here they say that one teacher and one principal can actually suspend or expel a child, but actually there's something called a manifestation hearing that has to take place if it's a child with a disability, or it might be because of a disability committed an act. But I mean, if we're only talking about modification of behavior, what behavior is being demonstrated that is incompatible in the classroom? Because see, they've created this wonderful word called, it's a word called, what is that word? I have to think about it because it was so dysfunctional. Degenerate, something called like a continued degenerate or something like that. And I'm saying, oh, what is that? I mean, who just collects all the negative stuff about a person and then submits it, and then who thinks that that's their job? Because I think that that's the problem. People believe their job is to document what's not working. When that might be part of the job, but there's a whole nother part on this other side that says you document what's not working, and then you analyze that data, and then you try something different to ensure that access is happening. And that happens for all children, boo, not just the ones that they say are special ed. I mean, but they have this, what do they call this? Social emotional learning going on in these programs called Harbor. And, some people really love that program because I think it's supposed to be social emotional learning and mentorships and stuff like that. But they are not talking about the academic core content standards that are available to all families when they understand, what am I saying? When they understand who they are. That's right. Because failure should just never be an option in the public education arena. And somehow it has become the only option of public service. I'm going to put it in the trees in America and get the sun on my face. I got to move. There we go. So I have a wonderful backyard. And so the reality is that in 2021, who are you? And how do you exemplify, or even if you are a young person and you have the opportunity to really understand what education looks like, but too that when you look around, you can see so many other kids who just didn't make it. And you didn't understand how come they just couldn't get the work done, you right? Because you would think that the work could just get done, but it can't get done when you can't read, write, and comprehend the King's English. And, and even they grade children by when they write paperwork and it's in broken English, because they get graded down for that too. And so, we have to understand just what the grading arena is all about, how they grade people, what the benefit is to the grading system, and what are they actually attempting to teach. And all these things, parents have a right to know, and parents have an obligation to themselves to understand just what they've chosen for services in the public education system. I mean, we say, okay, we want our kids to learn about Black history, and we want them to have the understanding that they get to access, all the same academic challenges and content standards that, that their peers, that their brightest peer would have access to. And that's that individual thought process, engaging in the process. And it's just real. As community, as Black people, we should be concerned that our history is not being taught within the public education system, and that we're living in American history right now. And we all witness, and just to have the ability to articulate and share the concerns about what happened on January 6th and what insurrection really means and how does it, but no, we have people who would have our children write a paper about being a slave, and if they chose to run, what and the consequences, what they leave their people behind. And I'm telling you, boo, that's exactly what happened. Some people moved on from slavery and they left people behind, and the people they left behind do not know how they got ahead. But guess what? If you can't read and write and comprehend the King's English, boo, you ain't moving ahead. I mean, it's just simple. You have to be able to, where they code switch. Obama code switched when he was in the room with folks who looked like me. He acted like me. But when he was in the room with people who didn't look like him, well, he acted like his mama. Hey, it's real. America's only beautiful when you see it as it truly is. The nature of being free is the obligation of free thought. Good morning, Mona. I was this time, I mean, you've got to know that in Kennedy High School, where all those kids were failing. And I mean, Kennedy is horrible because they used the children across the tracks to build that school. Because I remember in 1976 when we went over there, they were protesting for the kids that had to come over from Freeport because they used those children. But then when they got the school built, they didn't want those children to go there. And then, so it was always about the children who were getting there that weren't prepared to engage in the process. And those children kind of like, they stayed exactly where they were. There was no real academic support provided for them. But there was one great teacher, April Kozlowski. She was great. She worked with me, with my son, and she was aware when he came over there exactly what he needed. And he graduated at grade level. And I can tell you, special education is nothing but tools. They are the tools needed to utilize how to access the King's English and actually access and integrate in our system. And there's a whole transition process that is established by the child is 16, that talks about, you know, what um, what job or what transitional services will be brought to the student. But here they don't do nothing. And that just amazed me that they could write public policy and align it to what they're doing dysfunctionally in the local school. I mean, who writes that they don't want to have any accountability to respond to the federal response of disaggregated data that demonstrates that access is being provided to all children, but they don't want to say anything until 2026. And I said, well, who does that, boo? Who wants the money? And then they think that they're not going to have any. And then so I heard somebody say, well, we're not going to get the waiver. No, boo, it was never coming your way because this is a new administration. It's called Biden-Harris. And actually, Kamala Harris wrote the truancy policy for the state of California. So I'm sorry. There is no even policy written for truancy here in the state of Nevada, as that truancy piece is rodeoed through the Department of Justice and the harbor. And I'm saying, okay. And the harbor is actually considered a scholarship. And I said, oh, how in the hell did all that punitiveness just get into scholarship money? And who's afforded the benefit of that? Scholarship dollars. Oh my God. Honestly, I have never witnessed such dysfunction in my life until I started reading Nevada legislation that created educational opportunities, supposedly for all children, because all I saw was protectionism of a system of we the people, what we ain't gonna do for you. Ha! And I'm sorry, that's not law, it's policy. So when you understand there is a difference between public law and public policy, then you can address your needs because the law is the law. And that's all I can really say. So if you take the federal money and you receive these federal dollars, 90 days within your receipt of your dollars come the responsibility for the agency to rewrite their single plans for student achievement. And what am I saying? That single plan for student achievement, the plan that talks about how they engaged all the families and they brought them in and they talked to them about, the achievement of their students, because every parent has a right to have a concern as to how children are being progressed in their local school site, in the neighborhood school, whatever. And some of these schools are not neighborhood, no. They're called Victory and Zoom, and they have a process. And actually, they're 100% Title I schools, but you know what? They're just not, they don't act like Title I schools. No, because they assess people. And if you're not at a certain level, then you don't get in. And that's just how it is. But when you use federal money for Title I children, then it's open public school and it's not a charter school. But you can have charter schools, but charter schools don't get, you know, charter schools operate under whatever specific that wasn't happening within the local district, and then specifically are providing a specific service that's not happening within the local district. And then, hey, it's supposed to be different. So I don't know how they have all these charter schools here in Clark County that are failing and have been in program improvement. Program improvement for so many years, like 10 or 15 years, and they just keep on changing out the staff. No, it's a philosophy. It's what's going on. You're harvesting people. So stop harvesting. That's what I'll say. Oh, Nancy Pelosi, she's holding her weekly briefing on Periscope. And actually, I think one of those, I forget who's closing, but one of them, I think it is Periscope. I don't remember. Something's closing. And once it closes, it's going to move to Twitter. And then that's going to be it. But know that in America, there's only you and your box. How large your box is has to do with how large your box is. How wide is your thinking? How low can you go? Well, you can go down as low as you can go, or you can go as high as you can go. But really, the choice is yours. What work are you willing to put in? And what are you putting in anyway? Because I can tell you here in Clark County, I was just amazed because I thought Las Vegas was the entertainment capital of the world. And truly, black people come and perform on the strip here. And believe me, every black entertainer, it's a luxury to be here on the Las Vegas Strip. Now, I would challenge each one of those black entertainers to start paying attention because we do have one black club open back up that's there for the community. And that's where we lost because, Nipsey said he didn't know what divided us, but it was money, boo. And, it's just like when Snoop said, he says, I'm living my best life, ain't got time to deal with you niggas. Put your middle finger up in the air, and then you wave it like you just don't care, hey. And he was saying a whole lot of things, but everything was about choice. And so he does care because he goes back to the hood all the time, bringing people up one at a time. But we have to understand as we bring people up one at a time, each one reach one, teach one. But in a public agency that we're being forced to comply with under the standards of compulsory education, and that just means under the law, we all pay for this service, the benefit should be with our people. And as it is not, the wake up time is now in 2021 when we all witnessed the insurrection at the Capitol of people who would be Americans but are not Americans because, I think this is supposed to be the inauguration of their president, Donald Trump. Lord help me. I did not want to hear him talking for another 4 years. I had to pray about that. And my prayers were answered. The universe answered because he lost. Well, hell, he never really won. But because in America, we the people believe that every voice counts and every voice should count as we recognize that rural areas should have the letter of representation. So, that's how we did it. We gave some rural areas some people that they really didn't have, some invisible people, because they got some mighty points when it came to swaying votes. But it's in those larger states that have larger numbers of people where the people don't even bother to vote, don't even bother to talk about the failed services, just accept whatever happens to them. And I'm telling you, a closed mouth can't ever be fed. And that's just how it's always been. So where the failure was happening, the people were not complaining, but guess who was complaining? They just need more money to provide what? Failed services to you. Because they ain't changing their tune. Nothing at the board level has changed. Those women are so dysfunctional. I've never heard a board as dysfunctional as Clark County School Board. And they really need to shut it down in the manner that it consists, because they don't talk about student achievement and they don't talk about accountability ever. Ever. They talk about who gets to show up where. It's a glam shot. Same thing with the organizations here that's supposed to represent the folk. Somehow they like to take pictures with other people who are empowered. And somehow they think that the picture taking and the posing with elected officials makes them important. No, boo, it don't, because you can't show me on the ground who you're empowering except for yourself. And that is America. That is what we have to understand. We have to empower ourselves through knowledge and accountability and organizing and building back better. Build back better means that, boo, is you and me. Now, how many more people can we get in the room? That's what I would like to know, because our voices are truly the voices that are forced to stomach the dysfunction. And truly, I would not have made it with my children if I didn't have the ability to be there every day. But everybody can't be there every day, and I realized that. And every day I would go to the school site and see another black child sitting in office. And then it became a regular. And then they just had rooms where they would hold black children who misbehaved in the classroom. And I'm just talking about failing to transition to the next step. I mean, they didn't have their pencil or the paper out, ready to learn. See, a lot of these behaviors become how access becomes denied, because being ready just means being ready. And sometimes it's financial. Didn't have a backpack, lost your backpack, lost your book, didn't have a piece of paper, didn't have a pencil, came to school unprepared. I mean, not willing to change your clothes because you got no clean underwear. Come on now. Everything is about public showing here and public humility here. And some people just don't want to play the game anymore. And some people choose not to play the game because the game is so irrelevant. Nipsey said, hey, it was before the 8th grade. He decided to stop going to school. It just wasn't beneficial. And I do understand, why go to school to be made the class clown every day? Because you will be the one chosen to read aloud when you cannot articulate the King's English in a manner where people will snicker. And some of them bitches do it intentionally, and that's just real. So, this is 2021. You know, in the year 25, will we still be alive? I don't know. That was a song I remember when I was in the, there are so many good songs, and they weren't all made by black people. Then there's a lot of songs that are not made by folks that are just really not worth listening to, but it doesn't matter. You don't get to hear anything except for what they choose. And that is what's changing in 2021. Because they don't get to choose who you are anymore by monitoring what you do. But they get to monitor now. But when you can go off the grid and you can get, Nevada Senator announces some kind of largest conservation bill. I don't have time to look at it right now, but I like the little alerts that come to my phone. And, I like the fact that this is America. And knowledge has to do with your ability to engage in the process. And you don't have to learn nothing. It don't have to be you, because you are stuck on the same journey you were on your whole life. And all your trials and tribulations have to do with whatever challenges that you've had and you've had to face. But at any time that you chose not to move forward, you didn't have to move forward. And that's just real. Oh my goodness. COVID deaths are soaring in Brazil. Well, COVID's not gone away. And the real reality is that you really need to know who you are in 2021. And you really need to examine the challenges and choices that you made and move forward, because there is a forward path. And moving forward, even when you don't know, moving forward is the ability to understand that the benefit in public service should go to the services that are being provided to the people. But if the people are not benefiting from the services being provided, it is a time for the conversation. And this is what a democracy is all about: empowering those who had not prior had access to the ability to engage in, you know, the maintenance of effort of the services provided in a local community to them, and critique it and to make it better. And I think at one time we were on the pathway to a better nation. And then all of a sudden in the 70s, kind of like it just kind of like went away, especially after, that incident happened in Philadelphia, and then all the black liberationist movement, and then all the lockup of the black people who were educated blacks who were just liberationists for their people. And see, the fear has always been about who would control the masses and who would be the service providers for the people who look like them. And black people really lost out because we weren't in the room, and we lost the ability to articulate the concerns of failed services within our people. And that's just real. So here we are in 2021, where we were forced to witness the murder of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery. I can say the names, but it's just painful because, you know, it's continual every day, and it has not stopped. And the real reality is that we witnessed the insurrection at the White House, at the Capitol, where these same people were unable to stop mass public murders for the people who look like you. But they want your tax dollar, and they want you to vote. So do vote. Understand, it's the problem is that we have put people in position who are unable to do the advocacy that we need as individuals to empower ourselves. Because empowerment comes from within. And you just know what you know. And you don't know what you don't know. And that's just real. So here we are in America. And I'll say life is good. And it always has been. And, uh, and America is good. And what can we say? The benefit of living in 2021 is to know who you are and to act on everything you know, to do the things that you know are good for you, to benefit yourself, drink the water, and, choose, choice. Choice is everything in America. And we choose to either not be engaged or to disengage. And if you believe that it's not your responsibility, understand you're still a taxpayer, and that's the obligation of a taxpayer, to become a citizen, pay your taxes, and share in the obligation of concern of the maintenance of effort or the outcomes of the effort of the public service, as we are a nation of socialism, social services. I'm Jay King's online in Sacramento. But this is America in 2021. And I can say, I'm going to go get my iPad so that I can be out here dual. And I can use my phone to listen to some music and chill out. Because, this is America. And it's our responsibility as individuals to self-empower and to do what? Assume responsibility. And you can't say, I'm not my brother's keeper. Simply because if your brother doesn't make it, you don't either. So when Kaepernick, went through taking a knee, and Michael wrote a song about they don't really care about us, and Prince shared that he was going to sign with Tidal, and all of a sudden he talked about the music that he had produced, and he had a storeroom of music that they didn't even know about. Well, guess what? When they found out about it, well, he's gone. And that's just real. So we don't know what we don't know. And even though he had just performed the night before, regardless of the physique of these two marvelous individuals, Michael Jackson and Prince. All of a sudden they were in such chronic pain that they're like junkies and just OD'd, right? What a joke. How fearful. Who owns their music right now? Same people who owned it. When Prince wrote Slave on his face, wake up America. Who are we? If we don't control our children, which is their harvest, if we don't turn it around in 2021, who are we as Black American citizens? Where will our voices ever be heard? We have Black Caucus, and the caucus doesn't have representatives from every state. Perhaps states should select representatives just to represent the Black Caucus when they don't have a Black representative that was elected from Congress, as that's the purpose. Or maybe they should have representatives that are just specifically to represent the Black interests and how well states have provided adequate access to the civil services they're providing in their community, because some of us just ain't making it. But when you walk around and you see people that just didn't make it, and understand that there's still no obligation, no access way for them to make it, but then understand choice is everything. But real services have to be established so people can choose the pathway and then make a choice to continue the upward mobility, upward process. But when the process doesn't exist, there's a lack of hope. And when we see the failed services in the Black community, I fail to see where the federal government is protecting the rights of Black individuals nationwide. And perhaps that's how come Black lives should matter. Good morning, Mr. Higginbottom. Reality. As a Black American, we should share in the failed services and concerns of the people nationwide. How do we take back our personal responsibility to share concern of failed services, public education, which would be the pathway out of dysfunction when our people are being moved to a path of social and emotional learning that has no academic perception in life and has no real sustainable options. I mean, Obama could only do what he could do because he couldn't work with everybody because everybody didn't show up. And showing up is 100% of the chore that you have to do in America. You have to show up first. So where we should show up is where the harvest is continuing to be reaped. And that is with people who have babies. Some of these women have 5 and 6 babies who are all failing in the public schools and who do not know how to provide any protection for their children, as failure has just been accepted far, far below basic, has just been something accepted in the Black community. And then here in Las Vegas, where you would think the innovation of technology would exist and career pathways would be, multiplied in every area, than to have so many Black children in juvenile hall, 80% Black, helping with that. I'm not lying to myself. I understand failure is really a real concern. Looking for the conversation, though, amongst the educated people, allowing the undereducated people to talk about their journey and their inability because somebody has to speak for them. But in the churches, when they can't even speak for, they don't allow the people to sustain the movement. We have to come together. And I don't care how much money you have or how much money you don't have. Reality says it's not about the money, because in the end, you can have all the money in the world and still die the most unhappiest person in life. And that's just real, because money don't make it. The treasure in life is the gift, and understanding the gift of empowerment and empowering others to understand how to empower themselves truly by choice, and the willingness to continue and to move forward. But first, we have to figure out how we come together. It's irregardless. I don't care if you have, just call yourself a life. And a life and a spirit in America has an obligation to the spirit that it is trying to cultivate, to enhance that spirit, to make sure that spirit is strong. That's where I'm going to come from. I can't come from the because people are still trying to figure out what a leader actually is, what a leader actually looks like, what a leader actually does. And we haven't talked about the failed services that are happening within our community for the people who look like us. And I really don't care what you want to call them. If they cannot understand that you cannot protect your own living with a system that is mandated an oppression, a system of compliance, failed services mandated by the dollars that you actually put into the system to sustain it. And then the conversation and the limited ability to perceive how services are happening to the people who look like you. And we don't even have to give them a name, but they are failing miserably. And the inability for individual family members to save their children is real. So if you can talk about how we save the people who look like us, because they are not benefiting, and what we can do to change things by allowing people who look like us to work with our people who look like us, that is the reality. That's the reality I seek. And I said, if all third graders were reading or not reading, what is happening for the children who are not reading? And what are you doing? Because they're all children. And it doesn't matter what color the children are. In America, as an American citizen, we should ensure that all children have the same level of access. So we're just talking about access, reality, and we're talking about what's not happening for people who look like us because we can't make up our minds how we should be perceived. And they perceive us as a dangerous threat. And they would rather take your life than allow you to live your life. And that's what I understand. So irregardless of the color, because we get all into the shades of gray, which really don't make a difference. We get into the fake hair, which really doesn't make a difference. We get into the fake nails and fake eyelashes and, hey, it's just real, where the money is spent and the influence is made. And, when we walk into and we get these injections in our body that are really not safe, just trying to be, influential, really doesn't make a difference. Because if you have a child that's struggling and you have a child that's struggling to understand self-awareness and empowerment, then you can't change the circumstances for that child without understanding that child needs to know who they are. And so how they see us, irrelevant. Who we are truly, influencers in your own manner. You've had your own success. You understand what it looks like. You know what it looks like. And you know what you had to do. And you know where you come from. I know where I come from too. And I know where I've had the ability to ensure access happened for my children, but only because I was there to ensure the path happened. And I don't care how people saw me. Really irrelevant. I understood what my children had the right to have, and I had the right to choose the services that were happening for my children. And when there were failed services, I had the right to choose who would work with my children. And just as the accommodations are written within the law is the same exact law for everyone who lives within this nation. It has to do with the people who are implementing the process. And if we're not talking about coming into the room where the processes are being implemented, then I don't know what we're talking about. Because within a nation within a nation is what we witnessed on January 6th. And I'm not going there. Can't, really. And so I understand that if it had not been for my ability to be there when my youngest child, they said, was severely mental retarding communication handicap and would not benefit, from public education. And my ability to walk that journey with him and to understand that he graduated above proficient. Reality check. All children can learn. How we ensure that those pathways are open certainly comes from our ability to be in the room and critique the process. And I really don't care how they see us. It's irrelevant to me. It's not my business. As we all are taxpayers in America. And if we don't speak up, it's taxation without representation. It's relevant that our voices are heard as they are being providing services to our people that are irrelevant to us. And it doesn't really matter. If I can make it work for my child, And I've seen other people make it work for their children, and you seem to have made it. Regardless of what the system is, we're still living in America, and this is America. Accept it, regardless of how they phrase it. I really don't care. I know who I am. I can't live within limitations of descriptions. That's not who I am. And I understand what you're saying too. Everybody has a choice. And everybody has to work from where their journey takes them. And regardless, if we can't be in the patchwork quilt, then we won't make it. And that's where we are in 2021. When we figure out that the harvest is plentiful and we are not reaping it as individual people, as our people can't seem to come in one room, and we have to have some kind of agreement. And the agreement doesn't have to come within us. No, because living in America, individuals are relevant. And just as Stacey Abrams kind of like showed everybody that the relevance is in showing up. People showed up and change happened. And the more people show up, the more change is going to happen. And that is the fear of the current system. More people showing up, more change happening. But the relevance of organizing within your own community is up to you. I know who I am. I can only hope that in the process of my journey, I share the empowerment goes to other people. You know who you are, obviously. We are not the same people. We do different things. My journey is definitely different. My harvest is definitely in mobilizing, kind of like within individual self-empowerment, because these are the sustainable skills that are going to be necessary to have to be out here in the world and understand executive functioning skills and coordinating services and making it happen for your family is what you need to do. And not taking advantage of people, but actually helping to peg people and bring them up so that they understand that each person, each individual is so individually gifted, so uniquely crafted by the universe, and carry a different spirit and a different journey. So, all I can say is that my journey truly has been unique and plentiful. My sons truly are sustaining themselves and have the ability to grow and really achieve anything they choose to achieve in 2021. As the vision for, Barack Obama was a vision that his mother had. And truly, in her love for a black man, it happened. And the reality is that uniquely, you cannot critique or say or know anything because I don't know. I'm not divine. I don't know what America has for any individual, but I do know. I watched that young man. Perhaps you should watch him, Nipsey Hussle, and you should understand that the message that he was sharing and how he was empowering those young people was a different kind of way. And it's not that, we put a lot of faith in the American education system. Good morning, Mr. Maryland. I hope you had a great birthday. John L. Maryland helped me a great deal when in high school, when my children were going through high school. And we actually had a black parent organization that was working in that school. And when we left, unfortunately, the black parents kind of like faded away. But it's so critical that the black parents organize within local schools and help support those children because our children are left unkept. And the real reality is that they don't have any protections. And when they're told to write, papers about what it would be like to want to run away slave as a slave, I'll post it. I'll share it with you. And then they're supposed to talk about what it felt like and would you leave your comments behind and what would it feel like and who would it make you be. Okay, I mean, who asks those kind of questions except for white people who don't know anything about what slavery was actually like. And I'm going to tell you, immigrants don't either because they weren't here. And my grandfather was the last generation of slaves being sold on the block. So yeah, And he was a carpenter, and he was in Mississippi. And a lot of the houses that he built with a third grade education still happen. So it's not about education. We can't even talk about education. The American education system has failed. It hasn't failed. It works perfectly if you understand how to utilize it. And everything works perfectly if you understand how to utilize it. But if you don't know how to utilize it, then it can't happen for you. And that's just real. So, yeah, we have to guard our children, but we have to show up first. We have to have the advantage of understanding the process in which we never even were invited in until the late 60s. And when we got there, well, people were there that fought to be there, but then when they died out, they didn't replace you. So here we have a nation who write very restrictive educational policies within the state. And then they only want to do what they're writing what they said they would do. And they're not violating their laws, no, because they wrote their laws according to what they want to do. And irregardless if it violates your rights, well then you would have to read the policy and then say, hey, that's a restrictive policy. You can't implement that. And then file a complaint. And then you can win because what? The federal laws, you have the laws in the federal government say you have this, the local laws say you have this, and it's the local people that are implementing the rules. But if you ain't voting and you don't have no say so, and you don't even have a conversation locally about what's happening to the people who look like you, even though in Sacramento County had the highest infant death mortality rate for 20 years. And it was still going on when I left. And that's the capital of California. Their infant death mortality rate for black people in comparison to the number of people who lived in the city was largest in the state of California. And the black people there weren't talking about it. But you know who did talk about it? The Latinos. Huh. Yep. The Latinos were talking about the infant death mortality rate of the black folks because they was in there too, but they weren't as high as the black people. But the black people weren't talking about it. Hell, the black people didn't talk about anything. Then they went and got the Black Parallel School Board. But when the local governing board said they didn't have to listen to them, and they didn't. They just said, well, it doesn't matter. We can just listen to them. We don't have to do what they say. No. Why? Because black people weren't showing up for them either. They didn't show up for the local school board. They didn't show up for the Black Parallel School Board. I mean, black people understood where three or more gathered, then they could be prosecuted and criminalized, and all those things really did happen. So yeah, we know not to gather, and we don't gather. We got to work, we got a family. If a lot of black people tell you, look, I got a life and I got a wife and a family. I ain't got time to deal with you Negroes. And that's the way it is. Because they do give money to black people, and black people look out for their coveted few and the rest. Okay. So, yeah, we have a new information age, and failure is never going to be an option for people who understand how to read and comprehend the King's English, because the rights that you have as an American are just the same rights as every American has. And when you can prove in the court of law that you are right, then you get to win. Whatever. Here we go with this color thing. I'm telling you, it's color. And just like white ain't white, it's a color. And they're all in the crayon box. And quite frankly, you come on my podcast and, you try to insinuate that my thinking is some kind of differentiated than, and everybody's thinking is different. And my journey has to do with mine alone, not yours. Your journey is yours. And relevance of, well, get off. I mean, you have a great day too. And we don't all think alike, and that's just real. And we're never all going to think alike. And that was the intent in the world, that we start thinking alike. No, because if we needed to think alike, then the journey would be so, very narrow, tailored to the journey. And we'd kind of already kind of like be in the same category. And we're not. And that's just real. My conversation goes to local issues where young parents who would commit suicide or who would kill their children figure out that there are real supports for those families and that there's access to the supports and that they actually work with them and that there are people that look like them that are working within those programs. So, we have to have a lot more people who are working within the federal structure to provide services to ensure that access is happening to us. Because, what happened with those federal contracts is they went to, the Republican Party to contracts and contractors. And people got to write do good grants, and then they got to award those grants to their family. And, just like, the FACES organization here in Clark County is a not for profit organization, but they have an office at Clark County School District, and they provide parent engagement services for all of the families. But when it comes to families who look like me, well, I'm sorry, it just doesn't work for our families. For whatever reason, we're some kind of different. So, whoever you are has to be from truly your personal experience. And it's not the first time I've been criticized, and quite frankly, I really don't care. And I can't associate with the color. I just know who I am. And as a parent of children who raised my children single parent and whose fathers, well, made choices in life that really didn't benefit them as they are 6 feet under already. One older than me, one younger than me. Choice is everything in life. And we all make choices. But I'm going to tell you, if you love yourself and you know what love feels like for who you are and you value your journey, then you try to share your journey. You don't wrap it all up in a color and you don't wrap it all up in an ethnic group or what it feels like to be in charge, because this house Negro, field Negro thing is really real. People are gifted who have money. People are gifted who have talent. And it's truly a gift. As, you don't have another reason to say the gift didn't come by the reason of gift. And the ability to demonstrate that we are all able to do something worthy with our lives. But when you have money and you only look out for yours, well, or you don't look out for yours, well, we know what that looks like too. So life, and it's real. And we are all on this journey together. And when we understand that we will all be taxpayers, and under that system, my friend, under the taxation system where we all pay, perhaps we should have a voice in the maintenance of effort or the services that are happening for the people who are providing those services to the people with those tax dollars. That's all I'm saying. And you want to talk about what? How they ethnically parted up? And I'm saying, I don't want to talk about how they ethnically parted up, even though they have to provide that information disaggregated. I want to talk about how many kids are reaching the third grade and who's not making it. And if they're not making it, why ain't they making it? That's what I can say. And that's where truly the conversation comes in from. Because other than that, we just have to go by the numbers. And in the numbers says the people who look like you and me, ain't making it. Yep. It's a beautiful day today in Las Vegas, and it's supposed to be almost uh, pop-up double goods. I don't know what that is. I've talked to my nephew about what's going on. Um, he's promoting some fundraiser for the black colleges. And I worked so many years with Alan Rowe to do the historically black college tours. And I was willing as a parent to go into the schools and, try to talk to the young black kids. You don't like them calling them black, but, the children who are considered African American or formerly enslaved, whatever you want to call them. The children who look like me, to get them to come out to talk to the colleges, the reservists. The colleges sent their recruiters out, and I have tons and tons of videos on my page where the recruiters would be in the room talking to the kids, giving on the spot, uh, you know, scholarships, and then he had a group of young people work with the kids trying to get their GPAs up, but he never had access to the children at early grades, and that's just, they limited his access, and they also limited the dollars that were given in our community to provide support to the children. And so I'm gonna sign off. I'm gonna see what my nephew's talking about. I'm gonna go off for a minute, and I'll probably be back. But it's going to be a great day, so I'll probably come out here later. Until we meet again, follow me on Anchor, Sterling Anderson, Parent Empowerment on Anchor. And I have my Facebook page. I think it's Sterling Anderson 1958, because I'm 62. And then I have my Facebook page, of course. But my pages are about information and how the process works. I don't have time to jump into people's fantasies about their leadership skills, and that's just real. So until we meet again, this is Darlene Anderson signing out. Hey, and each one reach one, teach one. I'll say that.